reading.
The ing
දයාබර දූ දරුවනි ඔබේ ඉංග්‍රීසි දැනුම වැඩි දියුණු කිරීම සඳහා අපි ඔබට අත දෙන්නෙමු. ඔබ සඳහාම සකසා ඇති මේ සරල ඉංග්‍රීසි පාඩම් මාලාව තුලින් ඔබේ දැනුම තවත් වැඩි කරගන්න. ලෝකයේ අනෙකුත් රටවල් සමග අත්වැල් බැඳ ගන්න අපි ඉංග්‍රීසියෙන් කතා කරමු.
When we begin a question with the word can I or can we, also do we or do I have to, what are we doing here? We're really asking for permission or for guidance. Let me explain it this way. There is a sport that you like to watch on television, but you also know that you have to go to bed. It is time to go to bed. But the television program or the commentaries will go on much later than your bedtime. Let me try and explain it this way. You have a particular sport that you'd like to watch on television. There is also need for you to go to bed at a particular time, and the television coverage or commentaries will go much longer than your bedtime. So how would you ask permission to watch that program and not go to bed, and you ask this permission from your parents? You could say, do I have to go to bed now? Can I watch this game a little longer? That is how you would phrase or speak your question, asking permission. Do I have to? Can I? Can you think of another example? Well, I'm sure you could. Maybe you're not feeling very well. You have a headache and you feel like you've got a fever and you don't want to go to school. So you're seeking the advice of your parents, and this is what you might have to say. Do I have to go to school today? Can I stay at home and recover from my headache? You're asking for permission to stay home and feel better rather than go to school. Well, you have the two examples. I'm sure you can think up some more. And as you use these terms, do I have to or do we have to? Can I? Can we? We're learning how to ask permission. When we're talking about rules and advice, there are two other expressions. That's must and have to. I must go. I have to go. Means almost the same thing. You have to follow the rule. You have to go. Then you don't have to go could be a response you hear. You don't have to go. What is the meaning of that expression? Think about it. The choice is being given to you if you hear that. You don't have to. That means if you wish, you can go, or you may choose to stay on. So that's an interesting difference that we hear. You don't have to go, which is very different from you must go or I have to go. Now, there are rules which we express using these same terms. You must cross the road at a pedestrian crossing. or on the yellow line, as they sometimes say. You must cross the road on the yellow line or the pedestrian crossing. That's a rule. That's a traffic rule. You must follow it. Now, perhaps you are by the sea or near the river, and someone might say to you, you don't have to pay to swim. You don't have to pay to swim. What he's saying is, you can swim. You don't need to pay any money. You don't have to. On the other hand, if you are visiting the cinema to watch a movie, then the rule would be this way. You have to buy a ticket to see this film. You have to buy a ticket to see this film. So, we are now seeing different ways of expressing rules and how rules are applied. While we are on this topic of rules and advice, there's another familiar expression, and this is usually for giving advice. Here's advice that I might give you. You should take plenty of exercise. That's not a rule. That is advice. You should take plenty of exercise because it's good for you. Well, another example, you should get a good night's sleep. In other words, we shouldn't be wasting our time watching television or playing games or talking with friends or walking about in the middle of the night when we should be sleeping. So the advice that a person could give you is, you should have a good night's sleep. That means 6 or 7 or 8 hours without any interruption or break. That's advice. Can you think of other things that you might tell people to do? Well, when going to school, you might say, you should get to school on time. You ought to dress properly. That's another term then, ought to. That's almost the same meaning as you should. It is advice that we give. We are suggesting to someone that they follow that advice. You ought to dress properly. You ought not to make a noise. Well, if you're in a theater or in a cinema where there are lots of people who are watching what is taking place on the screen or on the stage, you don't want to cause any disturbance. So the advice is, you should not make a noise, or even you ought not to make a noise. We are asking then that you or someone should remain quiet. And that too we can express in that same way. You should keep quiet. When giving advice, here's another way you might express it. You should not eat too many sweets. That's advice. You should not use a mobile phone inside the cinema. That's advice. So think of these many ways of saying things, giving advice, obeying rules, and asking questions through which we seek permission. And you're going to learn some more about these. So watch very carefully and also listen and enjoy.